Emily loved simple routines. Every morning before work, she stopped at the same neighborhood coffee shop. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the soft morning sunlight through the windows, and the friendly atmosphere helped her begin each day with a sense of peace. It was a small habit, but it meant a lot to her. She had been deaf since birth and communicated mainly through sign language. Over the years, she had learned to navigate a world that wasn't always designed for people like her. She carried a phone with a note saved in large, clear text showing her usual coffee order. Most of the time, it worked well enough. She didn't expect special treatment, only a little patience and understanding. That Tuesday morning, however, the cafe was unusually crowded. Office workers filled the line, chatting with co-workers while checking the time. The baristas rushed from one machine to another, calling out names and preparing drinks as quickly as possible. Emily couldn't hear the noise, but she could feel the fast-paced energy around her. When her turn finally came, she smiled politely and showed the cashier the message on her phone. It read, "Good morning, I'm deaf. May I please have a medium latte with oat milk? Thank you." The young cashier read the message but looked uncertain. He asked something while pointing toward the menu. Emily gently pointed to her ear and shook her head, hoping he would understand that she couldn't hear his question. She tried using a few simple signs and repeated the order on her phone, but the cashier still seemed confused. The line behind her began growing restless. A man glanced at his watch. Someone quietly sighed. Another customer tapped a foot impatiently on the floor. No one said anything directly to Emily, yet she could feel the pressure building with every passing second. Her smile slowly faded. She wasn't upset because of the delay. What hurt was the familiar feeling of standing in front of a crowd while struggling to do something as ordinary as ordering a cup of coffee. Moments like these reminded her that even the simplest tasks could become difficult when people didn't know how to communicate with someone who was different. She took a slow breath, hoping someone would understand before she decided to leave without her morning coffee. Daniel had been waiting in line with his 8-year-old daughter Lily after dropping her off for school breakfast. It had become their little tradition to stop for hot chocolate and coffee every Wednesday morning. While they waited, Lily noticed the woman at the counter. She watched Emily trying to explain something with gentle hand movements while holding out her phone. The cashier looked nervous, unsure of what to do, and the people in line were becoming increasingly impatient. Lily looked up at her father with concern. "Dad," she said softly, "I don't think she can hear him. Please help her." Daniel followed his daughter's gaze. He immediately recognized the signs Emily was using. Years earlier, his younger sister had been deaf, and growing up with her had taught him basic American Sign Language. Although he wasn't fluent anymore, he still remembered enough for everyday conversations. He stepped forward slowly, making sure not to startle Emily. Standing where she could clearly see him, he smiled warmly before signing, "Hello, I'm sorry. May I help you?" For a brief moment, Emily looked surprised. Then her expression completely changed. The tension in her face melted away, replaced by relief and a genuine smile. She signed back, "Thank you. I just want to order a medium oat milk latte." Daniel turned to the cashier and calmly repeated the order. He also explained that Emily was deaf and couldn't hear the questions being asked. The cashier's face immediately filled with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," he said sincerely. "I didn't realize I wasn't trying to be rude." Emily nodded with a kind smile to show she understood. The atmosphere in the cafe changed almost instantly. The customers who had seemed impatient only moments before became quiet. A few watched with curiosity, while others lowered their eyes, realizing how easily misunderstandings can happen. Lily smiled proudly at her father, but Daniel simply shrugged. To him, it wasn't a heroic act. It was a small gesture of respect, one person taking a moment to communicate in a way another person could understand. Sometimes a few simple signs could say far more than words ever could. The cashier carefully entered Emily's order and handed her the payment terminal, making sure she could clearly see the total on the screen. Emily thanked him with a smile and signed, "It's okay." Although the misunderstanding had embarrassed both of them, she appreciated that he had apologized instead of pretending nothing had happened. As the coffee was being prepared, Daniel introduced himself through simple sign language. Emily replied that her name was Emily and that she worked at a nearby graphic design studio. She explained that situations like this happened more often than people realized. Most people weren't intentionally unkind. They simply didn't know how to communicate with someone who was deaf. Daniel nodded. "People usually want to help," he signed slowly. "They just don't know how." Emily smiled in agreement. The cafe manager, who had quietly observed everything from behind the counter, walked over and apologized personally. He admitted that none of the staff had received any training on serving deaf customers. Watching Emily struggle over something as simple as ordering coffee had made him realize there was an important gap in the way they served the community. Emily appreciated his honesty. She took out her phone and typed a short message. "You don't need to know perfect sign language. Even making eye contact, speaking patiently, pointing to the menu, or using a phone to type messages can make someone feel respected." The manager read the message carefully and thanked her for the advice. That afternoon, he gathered his team for a meeting. Together, they discussed simple changes that could make the cafe more welcoming. They decided to place small cards near the register, inviting customers to write or type their orders if needed. They also planned to learn a few basic signs, such as hello, thank you, coffee, and have a nice day. A week later, Emily returned to the cafe. This time, the cashier greeted her with a friendly smile and signed, a little awkwardly but proudly, "Good morning." Emily couldn't help but smile. The signs weren't perfect, but the effort behind them meant far more than perfection ever could. In that moment, she realized that real inclusion begins when people are willing to learn, one small step at a time. A few weeks passed, and Emily continued visiting the cafe every morning. This time, however, each visit felt different. Instead of worrying about misunderstandings, she was welcomed with warm smiles and simple signs the staff had practiced together. Every greeting might have been imperfect, but it came from genuine effort. For Emily, that meant more than flawless communication ever could. One Saturday morning, she walked into the cafe carrying a neatly wrapped box. Inside were homemade chocolate chip cookies she had baked the night before. When the manager opened the box, he looked surprised. "These are for all of you," Emily signed while also showing the message on her phone. "Thank you for choosing kindness." The employees smiled with gratitude. Even the young cashier who had struggled to understand her on that first busy morning thanked her sincerely. He admitted he had started learning sign language online after work because he never wanted another customer to feel left out. Daniel and Lily happened to stop by the cafe that same morning. As soon as Emily saw them, her face brightened. She walked over and warmly thanked them again. Lily happily signed the few words she had recently learned. "Hello, friend." Emily laughed softly and signed back, "Very good." The manager then shared exciting news. The cafe would begin hosting free beginner sign language sessions once a month, open to employees and anyone in the neighborhood who wanted to learn. Emily gladly volunteered to help teach the classes, believing that even a handful of simple signs could make everyday life easier for someone who was deaf or hard of hearing. Over the following months, the coffee shop became known as one of the most welcoming places in the neighborhood. Customers noticed the friendly atmosphere, and many joined the free classes out of curiosity or a desire to communicate better with others. Emily often looked around the busy cafe and smiled. One small act of kindness from a father and his daughter had inspired an entire community to become more thoughtful and inclusive. She realized that true communication is not measured by spoken words, but by the willingness to understand another person. When people choose empathy over impatience, even an ordinary cup of coffee can become the beginning of a lasting change.